GBETV. Yes, sir!
This is the Sharmin Prince Show, and I am your host, Sharmin Prince, on GBETV, where we know that progress is a must. I hope you all had a great weekend and you enjoyed the last show. Remember that your feedback is welcome and we want to hear from you. Today I have a guest for you. Her name is Michelle Lopez, and our topic today is about HIV/AIDS. We all know that HIV and AIDS has been a serious epidemic in Guyana and around the world, especially in third world countries. In 2016, Dr. Prasad said there has been an increase in the number of HIV cases. I think it was in May 2016 or at the end of 2016, he said there has been over 1,000 new cases. Now, if we think of that percentage and we divide it with our population, that's an serious amount of new cases. So it is something that we need to address. Sometime in another show, maybe I'll bring Michelle back, my guest today, to talk about prevention, the importance of having safe sex. You know, don't take off the condom until you're sure. So we'll get to that. Maybe Michelle is going to touch on that today. But Michelle is also an advocate, and she will tell you more about herself when she gets on the show. And I want to ask you a question. If you're listening, you know, remember to invite a friend, tell a relative about this show. But do you know your status? And it's a question that we all should ask each other. You know, be your brother's keeper. Do you know your status? And if you don't, what is preventing you from knowing your status? Why is it difficult for you to go to your doctor and say, I need an HIV test? I don't know if the test that is done here, if it got to Guyana yet, but there is a test that can identify if there's the HIV antibodies in your system, and it's one of those rapid tests. I don't know if it's there, but it's better to know than not to know. So I want to encourage you to go and get a test so that you can know your status, because knowing is better than not knowing. There's a new study out right now that if you're HIV positive and you've been on your medication and taking care of yourself, and the antibodies go undetected, you cannot transmit it. There've been 2 letters that have been out. I'm going to ensure that Michelle speak on that when she gets here. But so you see the importance of knowing your status. If you know how to take care of yourself. It's not a death sentence anymore. And one of the things that we have to do, it's when we hear that someone is HIV positive, don't make it an issue, and don't make it a form of gossip and label that person, because I know of quite a number of people that were ostracized because of their HIV status, and we want to move away from that. We were a people that looked out for each other and protected each other. We need to get back there. And even if someone has HIV, unless you have sex with them, you can't get it. So you shouldn't treat your relatives or even your friends differently if they're HIV positive. And I have this saying that in Guyana, HIV is like a household item because it touched each and every one of us in some form or fashion. If it was not your friend, it was a relative. So don't be condemning or ridiculing anyone that might be positive. Support them. That person needs your support. That person sometimes needs your shoulder to lean on. And it's important for us to become our brother's keeper or our sister's keeper. And that's a way of doing that. And another way of doing it is like if someone come to you and say, you know, who got HIV? They don't even say HIV. They say AIDS. Stop them and tell them, what is it profiting you or me sharing that information? Why don't we support that person? Because remember, HIV is an illness. And I think the stigma comes because it is contracted through sex and because of all the hang-ups and whatever we think about sex. So I want to encourage you today that support people with HIV. There's so many orphans within Guyana who are orphans because their parents died. We need to support those orphans, and some of them have HIV. I can't remember the number that I saw of orphans with HIV. Now, let's go to some greetings.
Great.
Diana sending shout out all the way from Brooklyn to Guyana.
Brooklyn Massive sending
Greetings to Georgetown, Guyana.
happy birthday, Uncle Wayne.
I hope you enjoyed the greetings, and remember to invite your relatives here that are in the US to participate in the greetings. Contact us, tell us where we can meet them so that they can send out greetings to you. And I hope that, you know, someone that sent out the greetings, you heard it's your relatives and they told you about the show, and you're sharing the show and letting your neighbors, your friends, and your colleagues know about the Sharmin Prince Show. Of course, I'm your host, Sharmin Prince. And before going to the greetings, I shared with you that our show today is about HIV and AIDS, and that HIV in Guyana is like a household item. We all have been touched by it, either a friend or a relative. And as I said, we have to become our brothers and sisters keeper and support the people that you might hear that have HIV or AIDS, and not be a part of the group that labels and stigmatize our brothers and sisters who are living with HIV. Today I have a guest, and my guest is Michelle Lopez. Michelle is Trinidadian, and you will meet her after this segment. But I want to prepare you for Michelle. Michelle is bold, straightforward. She's gonna give you it as it is. And I hope that you are ready for the show. Before we go to the commercial break, I want you to pick up the phone and call someone and tell them to tune in to the Sharmin Prince Show. Call your neighbor over and tell them, come quickly and hear this. You have to hear this. Call your friend, call everyone, and tell them to tune in to the Sharmin Prince Show, because we have a good one for you today. Let's go to the commercial break.
Next Gen Car Rentals. For reliable, clean, fuel-efficient and well-maintained cars, choose Next Gen Car Rentals. Telephone 231-8963 or like us on Facebook. Next Gen Car Rentals, taking you to the next level.
GBETV. Yes, sir!
We're back from the commercial break, and as promised, my guest is with me. Michelle, welcome to the Sharmin Prince Show.
Sharmin, thank you. Thank you for having me. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You know, I always tend to say I love the media because it's a platform that I utilize to educate my community. So thank you again, and I continually say this. God will continue to bless you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So Michelle, this show is being aired in Guyana. We know who you are. Can you introduce yourself to our Guyanese viewers?
Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. My name is Michelle Lopez. I'm 51 years old. I'm originally from Trinidad. And, you know, I have to say, quite recently, again, someone said to me, how should I introduce you, to the community? So I always say I'm a community giver. I give to my community. What I give to my community is education, because there's a lot of education we need, and it doesn't have to come from the books. So I am a woman that's living with HIV for the last 27 years. In 1996, I did receive an AIDS diagnosis because my CD4 had dropped to 86, and I was diagnosed with PCP pneumonia. I also too was diagnosed at that time with what we call an opportunistic infection. It attacks the brain. It's a disease called toxoplasmosis, where I had contracted this because I was living in a basement that had cats. And I used to clean the cat litter. I was someone, even though I was allergic to cats, I love cats. So, I'm thinking, they're my little company, but it caused me back in, and this was, as I said, this was actually 1996. So, I've survived quite a bit, but I always say to individuals, it just didn't happen overnight. I'm looking at 27 going into 28 years, of being diagnosed with this disease. And I always, embraced, it's from whence I came. And this is why, again, I embrace this platform in the media, because I am someone today that I totally have zero tolerance towards stigma. I don't just talk about stigma, I act on stigma. This is my method of acting on stigma. People are discriminated upon. There are some of us, this is 2017, and we still choose to be ignorant about this disease, I'm in a relationship, I have a daughter who was born with the virus. She did not seroconvert, so it's myself and my daughter, and she's 27 today. And the most wonderful thing that's going on, it's part of the education that I know I will be doing, right? Because she made me a grandmother last year. Her son was born in April, and this baby is HIV negative. So that's the other segment, as we go along. I want to be back. I want people to ask questions. I have no reason to lie. There is some phenomenal research and findings that is going on now. And, again, for those of us who are living with the virus, this is why I'm a big advocate for people knowing your status. Getting an HIV test today, it's supposed to be part of our medical routine. When you go to the doctor don't ask you, should I run your cholesterol? Should I check your pressure? No, it's part of our routine medical. So we'll be talking about all these things, right? So I work, because I don't want people to think, this woman, is just, here living with HIV. No, part of giving to my community, I work in the field. Right now I'm a research associate, and I run a campaign also too for Centers Disease Control here in New York. It's called the HIV Treatment Work, HTW. We will talk about HTW, throughout the conversation tonight, because HIV medications and treatment works, and once you have access to care and treatment, Sharmin, I would never disclose anyone's status, but I have a lot of individuals that I have linked into care that came from Guyana that needed care, but they confided in me, and I'm so happy. I link people into care where you can get, medical insurance to cover your care, so I have people commuting back and forth, right, because they're not getting the good care. They're not getting access to the medications that we have out here. So there's a lot of things, that I gotta say again, I'm blessed. I'm thankful for what God is using me for. So
tell us Tell us when you were diagnosed. Give us a synopsis of what that looked like 27 years ago.
Sharmin, 27 years ago, I was a woman living in a domestic violence situation. I'm a DV survivor, right? And here I was, 24 years old, a young girl, really just what I would say, looking towards that dream. I'm gonna meet a guy who's an American citizen, and we're gonna get married, and he's gonna help me get my green card. I didn't get the green card. I got HIV. But I got this HIV, and I was really determined. I just couldn't lay back and die. So how I got to knowing my status, this particular night, right? I know it was a day during the week, and this guy that I was with, he was not the person that infected me. I would say that. But I would get to that. Living in a household with him, he was an active crack user, but I think a lot of times, we say to women, why you don't leave this situation, you're in denial. It's not that. It's just the man was really, today I can say it, bipolar. He was such a sweet, loving person, but whenever he smoked this crack, oh my God, I got the beatings. So this particular night, I got the worst beating, but it was the best. Because I left, and here I am today, right? So here I am today is what I'm going to give you viewers a lead up to. Here I am today. I flee that night. My daughter was 9 months old as a newborn baby. He was not my daughter's father. And I wrapped her in a blanket, and I just started riding the trains. At that time, we were living in Queens. And I remember I rode the trains all night long. I'm a person also too. We will talk about this because I can't, I would be remiss if I don't talk about my spirituality. Because I got on the train, I was bloodied, I was messed up, I looked like a piece of work because he did a number on me. I remember I partially cleaned up myself, and I had the baby in the blanket, and while I'm riding on the trains, I just started praying. And that praying kept me going all through the night. It was morning time. And by that time, as I said, I was just switching trains because I knew it was morning time. The working population started coming on the train. I remember asking this one particular lady, and she said, "Oh, honey, it's after 9, a little bit after 9. We got in a conversation. I didn't say anything. She looked at me. "You okay?" I said, "I'm fine, miss." I got out. No, I got out of the carriage, and I moved into another carriage. And as I moved into another carriage, I looked up and I saw an ad on the train. And that ad spoke to me. The ad said, if you're a woman who is enduring drug use, who is dealing with domestic violence, if you're an immigrant, call this number and you can get help. And Sharmin, the next stop, I got off the train, and that stop was Nevin Street and Flatbush Avenue. And there was a public phone. We don't have public phones anymore. There was a public phone at the corner. And where I was at was Nevins and Flatbush. And I dialed the number that I saw on the train, and Sharmin, to God be the glory, a voice did answer. It wasn't a recording. It wasn't a press this, but hello, and you're calling Community Family Planning Council. How can I help you?
Let's take a commercial break and come back to Michelle.
GBETV. Yes, sir!
Next Gen Car Rentals. For reliable, clean, fuel-efficient and well-maintained cars, choose Next Gen Car Rentals. Telephone 231-8963 or like us on Facebook. Next Gen Car Rentals, taking you to the next level.
Michelle, thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me.
When we ended off, I was asking you about your experience being diagnosed, and I think you ended off that you found a domestic violence shelter?
Yes, well, I found a medical clinic, for our viewers who are back, because of me just coming off the train, making that call. That's what I tell people, I know my God works, right? I called the number that was there, a voice answered, and it was actually the head nurse that was in charge of this new program that it's a federally qualified health center. Back then, they were not a federally qualified health center. They were a family planning organization, and they had received a grant, right? And that grant was to help women like myself get into care. I've got to share this part. Standing at the corner speaking to the woman who took my call, who was the head nurse running this program, I broke down and I started crying. And I started, I shared quite a bit of my life. And she said, "Miss, where are you right now?" And I said, "I'm in Brooklyn." I said, "I'm standing at the corner of Flatbush Avenue and Nevin Street." And Sharmin, viewers, my God, how he works. I was standing 5 blocks away from the facility. Okay, that was there, help was there for me. 5 blocks. When I described where I was at, she said, "Miss, turn around. I want you to walk towards west." She said, "And come 5 blocks into Nevins." She said, "And you will find me." Sharmin, I walked into that facility. Her name was Miss Lily Chen. She was Asian, and the name of the organization at that time was called Community Family Planning Council. I walked in there. I was offered an HIV test because of the things that I shared with them, of what I was going through living with this man. And they did said to me, we don't just want to test you, we want to test your baby. Because of your baby being newborn, she was 9 months old, we would like to do an HIV test on both you and her. That same day, they did place me into a domestic violence shelter, because back in those days, 1991, we did not have what you call the rapid test. So I had to remain in the shelter. I was placed there for 2 weeks. And sure enough, the results came back. Both myself and my daughter was HIV infected. They knew she was infected because the type of test that was done on her was called a PCR test, a polymerase chain reaction test. This is a confirmatory test that lets you know, yes, this is not just antibodies, this is infection that we are seeing here. So, they were, I was told she was positive, and I have to say, my life came to a standstill. I knew nothing about women having HIV. I remember saying to the doctor, I said, "How could you tell me that me and this baby's HIV?" I said, "Only gay men get this disease." And there's some people today still believes that. It's not a gay man's disease. It's a human disease. HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. I've heard people even said, "Oh, why don't you go take an AIDS test?" It's not an AIDS test. AIDS stands for acquired immune deficiency syndrome. When HIV is left untreated, it can compromise your immune system, where you have acquired now these syndromes, right? So you have a definition of AIDS. That's why I said in 96, right? I had a definition of AIDS because I fit under the clinical profile. Today, some people would ask me, "So do you still have AIDS?" Once you had an AIDS definition, you're still clinically defined as AIDS. I am doing 100% better, right? Today, as I said, my viral load, that's how they measure, right, the particles of virus in your, in your immune system. It's undetectable, yes, for the past 9 years. My T cells right now, right, is 1127. So I came from 86 T cells, throughout the course of the year, because I stuck it through. I didn't give up on medications. I did not, to say there were side effects that I experienced. My first line of drugs that I took, I was taking a drug called AZT, 1,250 milligrams, and we had to take that 5 times a day. My first year of me taking AZT, I woke up one day with black and blue blotches all over my body. My hair, yes, I am of Hispanic origin, but my hair came like an East Indian. It had thick, people, "Oh my God, Michelle, your hair is so silky." No, I developed a severe case of anemia, right? I then had to have that anemia treated, so, I got over a couple of hurdles. I then came down with another, opportunistic infection, that orally affected me. It was called oral hairy leukoplakia, right? It's a precancerous, OI that you can get orally in the mouth. These are things that I survived it. Doctors did not think, because once they see these types of opportunistic infections, they start writing you off. I remember being approached. A social worker then came to my house so that I can do what you call a living will. And I had to identify a person who, once I die, that person is who's going to be in charge, who's going to take care of my children, who's going to raise my children. Guess what?
You're here.
I'm here. I've raised them. We are talking about me being a grandma today. But it just did not happen like that. Fear. As an immigrant living here, I'm not an American citizen. As an immigrant living here, oh my God, both my children are American citizens. So I just felt, that's it. I got denied my green card because back then we had a law. If you're an immigrant and you test HIV positive, you will be denied a green card. I was denied a green card, so my name went into a file of individuals. If I left the United States, I was not going to be, allowed to re-enter into the United States. And my son was taken away from me, not taken away, but he was withheld from me. Because when my family first found out, I did disclose, that's another topic, right? Because I disclosed to my family, because I was prepared, I got educated, I knew what my rights were. I knew I was not, a casual, spread of this disease. I've met people, thank God I didn't have to deal with that. You can't eat on the same plates as your family member. They're buying plastic plates, plastic cups. The one time I had to deal with that, I was dating someone, yes, he was positive, and his family members knew that we both were positive, and it was a Thanksgiving dinner, darling. Education came right on point. I showed up there. I remember before we got there, he said to me, Michelle, let's stop and get some plastic plates. And so yes, I stopped. We got to the store and I bought the blacks. When we got there, I'm thinking it's everyone because, they're American blacks. And I know his family was big. So in my head, I'm thinking, well, everybody's a big family. Nobody want to do dishes, so plastic plates. I got there. And a lovely table was set. Knives and fork and beautiful china. And there was 2 empty spaces with no chinaware. And this was his sister, this was his cousins, and they said to him, David, you could put, your wares and Michelle wares. Sharmin, I gotta put this down. And as he proceeds to take it out the bag, I said, excuse me, wait 1 second. I said, these plastic wares is just for myself and David to use? I said, oh no, darlings. I said, this is going to be a happy Thanksgiving when I'm finished. I said, let me tell you all something. This disease called HIV, I said, it is spread because of this reason right here. I said, what you all are doing to him? I said, because you all are not doing it to me. I'm about to address you all. Don't you all ever take God out of your thoughts and allow someone or tell someone that's living with HIV they have to eat on a plastic plate. They have to eat on plastic cups, darling. Dinner was at a froze because I made people think, I made people cry, but they listened. But I did excuse myself when I was finished. Definitely. I said, and I am going to go now over at my friend's house who had invited me, who I will be able to sit down and enjoy a Thanksgiving dinner and not feel stigmatized. So when I leave, I said, David, you're not coming with me. You're going to stay here? I said, you all need to have this conversation. I said, I'm out. But my job was done.
Let's go on a commercial break and we'll continue when we come back.
Yes.
Next Gen Car Rentals. For reliable, clean, fuel-efficient and well-maintained cars, choose Next Gen Car Rentals. Telephone 231-8963 or like us on Facebook. Next Gen Car Rentals, taking you to the next level.
GBETV. Yes, sir!
Welcome back to the Sharmin Prince Show. I'm here with my guest, Michelle Lopez. Michelle, I have a question. Why did you go public with your status, knowing the stigma and the labels?
Sharmin, I choose to go public with my status because it is one of the reasons why I know this disease continues to spread. There is a two-way situation that is going on, and it falls under the umbrella, yes, of stigma. There are people who are very much aware of their status, and these same individuals have seen the outcomes of someone who either had disclosed or, again, you know, the gossip got around in the neighborhood and some people did some fact finding and they found out some fact finding and they have seen the repercussions that this person had to deal with. And this is why I choose to come public. I want to end stigma, because until we educate, until we take the time, like what you're doing with me, and giving people a chance to look at real life scenarios, because we walk in each other's shoes, you know. We walk in each other's shoes. You know, but me educating individuals is going to do something about it. It's going to leave people to think. It's going to leave people to, you know, look at situations that they themselves, you know, just, you know, not regressing, but again, talking about my family. When my family first learned that my son was positive, you know, that I was infected, and my daughter was infected, my son, he's the first of my kids. They have different dads, right? And he's not positive. And my parents said to me, we're going to take Rondell to live with us in Trinidad, because at least, this were my mom's word, at least I could save his life. And I'm pausing, because it's, you know, it didn't click on me then. You know, again, I was still young, vulnerable to things. And then, you know, as I got more and more educated, finding community, I did. And because of me educating myself, it helped me to understand.
What did she mean?
What did she mean by this? She thought this child living in the household with me and his sister would have been exposed to the virus. And that's how I educated them. Little by little. I would give them fact-finding information because I really had to understand what their fear was about. They didn't know. There are things today I would not accept that I have accepted from individuals back in the late 80s, in the early 90s. You know, because education, again, those of us who are ignorant to the fact, I think today, but back then, so me getting over those opportunistic infections and me having life and me understanding what my rights are and me knowing that I am not putting that child at risk, I went back to Trinidad to collect my son. I didn't have my green card then, but I said it's me and God, because being educated, I'm a mom. And not because I'm living with HIV. HIV don't define me. HIV do not define someone. HIV is a situation, it's a disease that came into our lives because of situations and circumstances. Some of us had no control. We had none. We didn't have choices. We didn't have options. And the elephant is in the room, and I'm doing something about it. So when I got educated and I showed up in Trinidad at my parents' house, all men, I mean, it was a turn of the times. Because I remember very well my aunt, she said, "What you doing here?" I said, "What am I doing here?" I said, "First of all, I live here." I said, "I might be in America." She said, "Michelle," she said, "we're not going through this." I said, "Where is my child?" Really? I said, "I don't need to get into all of this with you guys. Where is my son?" My mom was in America at that time, because she used to come up. I would say she was a mom. She stood by her kids no matter what. She did. But she had, you know, she had her points in time where she did not understand. And I was stigmatized, and I did have to deal with the discrimination.
How did you deal with the stigma when you first came out?
I knew I had community behind my back when I first came out. Sharmin, those of us who are diagnosed with this disease, once we find community, you start building a new family.
But how do you find community when you don't trust people? You don't even trust your own family to tell them that you're HIV positive. How would you find a community? How do you build a community?
I found community from another person who was living with the virus, who knew. I had shared with them. And that's why I said, for those of us who are within mentally, physically, spiritually where I'm at today, we won some battles. We had some battles that we went through. And because of battles that those individuals who I met, that they overcome, they embraced me. They taught me things. They showed me love. They accepted me like a family. And those were the words. Those were the words that was used to me. You may not have a biological family anymore, but you have us. I was at a conference, and there was hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people who were living with this virus, and they embraced me. You know, so I built from there. I got encouraged. I got felt, you know, I was made to feel, Michelle, you are somebody. You have a right. This disease don't define you. I remember them saying, girl, you got a fire in you. We just gonna help you all to channel that fire. You know?
What about the people that might be viewing, listening to you? They feel encouraged and empowered. Like, I would love to disclose, but I don't have a community. I don't have that circle where I can go to a conference and I can find people that are living with the virus.
Right.
What do you say to them?
You start building your community. For the people who do not have what I have here in the United States, that I have here in New York, I remember my mom using the words to me saying, Michelle, if you come back home and you do this kind of work that you're doing there in America, she said, child, they're going to deport you back to America. You know, God rest my mother's soul. She is, you know, she is no longer here with me, but it's still a desire of mine. I am preparing Trinidad for me right now, because I'm coming. I'm going to go, and it's not just Trinidad.
No, we're going to Guyana next year.
It cannot be just Trinidad. You know, again, I have a purpose that I clearly understand today why God is using me. God did not give me this virus. He did not. Nobody punished me. God did not punish me and cause me and my child. No, I did nothing. I did what anyone else who was not positive today, but who have gotten into relationships, who started having sex with individuals, and you just were not expecting HIV would have been a factor. But it's here. And I've learned now. I've learned when I talk about the community that I found, my family got jealous when they saw embraced. How embraced I was with people then who were decision-making individuals, people of status quo. That's the next thing. I want to be able at one of our segments to talk about the classism that goes on amongst our people. Because certain people could have it and they're so protected, and then when they find out, all right, it's accepted, but you know, you come from, you know, we each...
If you're poor.
If you're poor, right? Let's keep it real.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a poor woman of color, you know, we have these different, you know, status that we allow people in society to put us there.
Mm-hmm.
So these different, you know, again, isms and these different status that people, the HIV community taught me, people who, you know, again, who is of the caliber that some of us just want to associate and affiliate with, they said, Michelle, the things that you have taught us, we need for you to be around this table. Do you know other people like yourself who will be willing? You know, and I went through that process, and the respect that I have today, because I give respect, so I get respect. So these are the things that I have embraced, that I've learned, and I'm teaching other individuals we can do these things. That's how you build community. Somebody got to start it. And it really takes sometimes just that one person.
Let's go to a commercial break, and then when we come back, we will continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Yes.
GBETV. Yes, sir!
Next Gen Car Rentals. For reliable, clean, fuel-efficient and well-maintained cars, choose Next Gen Car Rentals. Telephone 231-8963 or like us on Facebook. Next Gen Car Rentals, taking you to the next level.
How important is disclosure of your status?
Sharmin, I would start off saying, firstly, it is very important, the disclosure of someone's status. I will then go on to say it is not the easiest thing to do. Again, there are people who have accused me, Michelle, you make this disclosure thing, look so easy. It's not that I make it look easy. I started doing it until it worked. I like that. I am a person because I worked on Michelle first. The way how Michelle feel about Michelle today, the things that I understand about people and behaviors today, I didn't know this, 20 years ago. I have grown. And I have grown again because of me choosing to educate myself, to understand, to find me. I did the work on myself first because I had to learn I can't expect anybody to love me, to accept me, to respect me until I can do that for myself. And because also too, I understand the impact of disclosure and what it does to people's life. I can disclose, but when someone shares with me that they want to disclose, what comes behind it, Michelle, can you help me disclose? Disclosure, first of all, you got to look at, why does this person need to know? You have to look at that. Why does this person need to know, right? You also then have to look at, once this person knows, how am I going to be able to then handle? Because you cannot tell anyone how to handle your disclosure. You cannot also too, in some settings, you have to choose where you disclose. We have cases here, I don't know of it in the Caribbean diaspora, but we have cases here in the United States where women disclosed and they were murdered. So I've had people ask me, Michelle, aren't you scared? First of all, I'm not disclosing to you before we have sex. After we have sex. That's my number one rule. I am not disclosing to you after we have sex. So there are times when disclosure came to me, it came, yes, in the heat of the moment, and I stopped. Because it happened so fast, and this is when, again, I'm keeping it very real. This is when I was not in relationships, but I wanted to date as a woman living with the virus. And when it came to that point, I would never lie. I stopped. I said, listen, this cannot go any further. Stop. No. The gentleman did get upset. You lead me on, you did that. I said, listen, the reason why I am not letting this go any further, you and me don't know that much about each other. And then I would say, I did disclose to the person. It was not in the bed, in the bedroom, and then I say, you know what? Let me go outside, just take a little walk. We need to talk. I said, because this here, what almost happened, it could have happened, but I stopped it. Because when I said, got to the point, I disclosed to the person, and to this day, there are people who I did not then get into the sexual act, but I did disclose because it could have gotten to a sexual intimacy with us, and we are the best of friends today. And what I have gotten back from the individuals who I disclosed to, who we are not in relationships today, every single one of them were very grateful. And they said to me, Michelle, never imagined that I would have had to experience a situation like this. I have had men said to me, if you didn't tell me that you're living with HIV, Michelle, there's no part of you looks anyway. This is not about a look anymore. It's not. Not saying there didn't used to be a look, but because we have gotten as advanced as we are with medications today, and again, there are those of us who is really taking care of ourselves. We can live a very healthy, productive life like someone who is negative. So I have a son. I had a very loving father who passed away. I have brothers. And what happened to me, I would not do it to the next person. Give someone a choice. Choose your setting. But it can be done. It can be. It's not what you do. It's how you go about doing it.
How important is safe sex today?
Sharmin, safer sex is very, very important. And I'm going to start off saying the information that I shared with the viewers came about because I did not know and understand the importance of safer sex. HIV, infections that can make us unfertile as women and men. You know, there are sexually transmitted infections that can cause us, you know, to develop cancers of the vaginal and penile area. Okay, organs, because our organs and they're built internally. Safer sex today, a lot of individuals don't know how to accomplish that. One of the things that I do as an educator, I'm a certified sexual health educator. And I teach people the same way I sat with my kids. Because again, charity, it got to start in the house. Charity begins at home, ends abroad. I sat with my children because I raised my children also to be open, be honest with me, be outright. You know, have your respect. Because yes, I have boundaries as a mom, but I'm one of the most, open moms. And I literally sat with my son and my daughter and engaged them in conversations about safer sex. And I explained to them why we're having these conversations. I said, because you see how we're having these conversations? When you guys are sexually active out there, this is how you do it. Normalize it. I've said to individuals, when you put a condom on, make it about the two of you guys. Make it about you and your partner. Help your partner put the condom on. I mean, I've even done things, and I'm saying this, I've taught women how to put condom on with their mouths because I want them to be able to sexualize the fun of it. Again, it's not what we're doing, you know, it's how we're going about this. Don't make it a task. You know what I'm saying? Again, when I got with my partner, yes, we were using condoms. And this is a West Indian man who have this block against, oh, I ain't gonna feel, it's not gonna feel good. My goodness, I'm not just speaking for him. Eventually, I'm gonna get him to come on the show. He's a very personal man. Eventually, I would. But darling, let me tell you, the fun we had. I put on the condom. We enjoyed it. Again, if you know what you're doing, a condom is there to protect you from the things you do not know.
Repeat
a condom is there to protect you from the things you do not know. It is then up to you and your partner to make that sexual intimacy enticing. That's it, Sharmin.
Michelle, well, I want to thank you because I know that this has been an informative show, and I will have you back because you have to come back and we have to discuss sexual health.
Yeah.
Because it's so important for us to be healthy sexually, mentally, and physically.
Right? And I want to add in, when we do that piece on sexual health, the aging community. I'm over 50. You know what I'm saying? As I said, my life, I'm sexually active. My significant other, I would admit, he is younger than me. Yes. He's in his 40s, early 40s.
Okay.
I'm not a cougar.
Okay.
He is attracted to me. Hey, I liked what I see. You know, he's a very mature person. Excellent conversation. Oh my God. So we got things to talk.
Yes, ma'am.
We got things to continue to talk about. It's not just talking. Sharmin, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for having me here. I will continue to be a guest on your show because there's no cure for HIV. There's still a tremendous amount of sexually transmitted infections that is impacting our communities of color. And, you know, let's be real. I'm going to say it again. We don't have a cure for HIV. Many of us who have gotten over the hurdles and gone through makes it look easy. It's not being easy diagnosed with HIV. We could prevent it. It's 100% preventable.
On that note, thank you, Michelle, and we'll take a commercial break.
Next Gen Car Rentals. For reliable, clean, fuel-efficient and well-maintained cars, choose Next Gen Car Rentals. Telephone 231-8963 or like us on Facebook. Next Gen Car Rentals, taking you to the next level.
GBETV. Yes, sir!
Welcome back to the Sharmin Prince Show, and I'm your host, Sharmin Prince. I want to say thank you to Michelle for being on the show. I know you and you learned something from Michelle. But I want to caution us because I heard an incident or a situation this week that someone sent their partner to get an HIV test. I want to encourage you, instead of sending your partner, you and your partner should go together and get the test at the same time, and then you go for your results together. It would avoid you pointing your finger to the other person that you're the one that infected me, and label and stigma and everything. Go together. It's better. And of course, you know, in Guyana you could get whatever, whenever, however. But so you want to go with your partner. I want to thank you for watching the show. Thank my producer, Shabini. And I'm your host, Sharmin Prince. This is GBETV, where we know that progress is a must.